Artoria Pendragon Altar, Saber. Artoria Pendragon, Altar, class name Saber Altar, Seba Oruta, is the Saber class servant of Sakura Matul in the 5th Holy Grail War of Fate/Stay Night's Heaven's Feel route. She is a changed version of Artoria Pendragon after being consumed and blackened by the mud from the shadow. She is one of the servants summoned by Ritsuka Fujimaru in the Grand Orders of Fate/Grand Order. Also called Artoria Altar, Artoria Oruta, and better known as Arthur Pendragon/King Arthur. In history, she is a different figure that may not have been known to others as possibly being the legendary King Arthur himself. Accompanied with her inversion, the holy sword Excalibur is also dyed in the attribute of evil, turning into a jet black sword. It seems that Excalibur, a sword gifted from the fairies, has the possibility of possessing both attributes of good and evil as well. There exists Vivian, the fairy of the lake who possesses the attribute of good, and Morgan, who exists as the antithesis to Vivian that possesses the attribute of evil. In addition, in Artoria Altar's Fate/Grand Order interlude, Vortigern, who was criticized as the look-alike of Vortigern, the late vile king of ancient times, from a certain person, servant, was a figure who usurped the throne of Britain and was the older brother of King Uther, the father of Arthur. Appearance. Corrupted by Ingra Mainyu, Artoria Altar is vastly different from her normal self. She is also called Black Saber, Kuro Seba. The results of her alteration is not only within Artoria Altar's interior but also extends to her outward appearance. The color of her skin becomes pale, and the pupil of her eyes that were at first concealed behind a black visor during the moment of her summoning becomes golden from her original green eye color as well. Because the armor she wears was dyed jet black and grew in weight due to changing into a heavier armor, its power has increased more than normally. Personality. A different aspect of the King of Knights devoted to cruelty, greatly unlike the case of the normal Artoria. She is referred to as Saber Altar. A behavior without futility, a cold-hearted personality that makes Artoria seem like a different person, but if one is to carefully come into contact with her, they might notice that what lies at the basis is still the same. Artoria Altar's personality changes vastly from her normal self upon being corrupted by Ingra Mainyu, but she cannot be called a villain. She is more of a dark hero who is still an idealist clinging to her own values even after being blackened. After taking in by the hatred of the curse, Artoria Altar comes to the realization that the duty of a hero is to be hated and ostracized, that a hero's only duty is to cut down foes using all their strength. She believes that she was prepared for such an outcome upon drawing Caliban, and decides to entrust her blade to all the world's evils. While she still takes her duty as king seriously, believing it is her obligation to those whose lives were lost because of her, she no longer believes in the ideals set for herself and her people. The end was concluded long ago, after all her prayers and glory vanished on the hill in Camlan. While alive, Artoria did not fall into the path of evil even once, but she too had doubts, inner conflicts, hatred towards herself and grief towards the surroundings. This figure, influenced by the curse of the Holy Grail, is someone that had such issues hidden within her raised to the surface and caused her policy to go inverse. Because a section of her character's attributes has been inverted, the basis of Artoria Altar's characters speak words and display deeds like those of a tyrant, which is the exact opposite of her usual character, but there is no change in her goals and ideals themselves, and it seems she shows a bit of her original self as her feelings towards the people who are close to her have been left behind and intact, although barely. The usual Artoria persisted in being chaste for the sake of her ideals, but this Artoria approves tyrannical rule for the sake of her ideals. Having been violated by the curse of the Holy Grail, this is a side of the King of Knights, a tyrant that persisted in being heartless. Maybe, the ideal king that King Arthur pursued was something like this after all. Maybe because her magic core goes outside the scale, but at any rate, Artoria Altar is a servant that eats a lot. The dragon is a glutton. In addition, even her food preferences, which could be regarded as her identity, have changed. She spits out cooking with courteous, elaborate, abstruse tastes as bad and chews down large quantities of junk food. A new identity for Artoria who came into contact with the foundation of foreign cultures, as if food culture has become a heroic spirit. Concerning her who has an evil heart that is outside of the norm, meals become nothing but refreshing fuel, and it seems the manner of being able to eat food in a simple way is desirable for her. Awful eating habits, but she herself seems greatly satisfied, so maybe this can be called a form of happiness. Concerning her motive on what to wish for on the Holy Grail and what rouses her to pursue it, it is no different from Artoria's. However, affirming her strength to the point of committing atrocities, she not only responds to the desires of a master wishing for a strong servant because of their objective to fight and save the world, but she responds to also do battle against the master's more repulsive enemies and the more powerful adversaries, as well as to train the master in improving their skills. Her methods surely differs, but her approach to guiding and understanding the master is certainly Artoria Pendragon's. In addition, in the world of Fate/Grand Order, her existence as a servant is separate from Artoria Pendragon's, and Artoria is no longer consumed by the blackening caused by the curse of the Holy Grail. Abilities. After being blackened, her magic reactor grew outside the scale, greatly increasing her magical energy consumption. However, thanks to being Sakura's servant, she was provided with her enormous magical energy supply. Whereas Artoria used to contain her own power, due to her past masters usually being unable to provide her with sufficient magical energy, in this condition, she wields powerful energy without hesitation. As such, her destructive power has also been increased, becoming a fearful being, inflicting havoc and death upon the world. Although Artoria was able to make use of her original abilities without being affected by the master after making a contract with Rin, and just seeing her standing in that state without moving a single finger was enough to make Shiro believe that there seemed to be no end to her overwhelming power and that she wouldn't lose even to Heracles. In a sense, Saber Alter is even more powerful than she was in life, and none can deny that she is the strongest servant. In straightforward attack power, she is the strongest. Combat. Having been released from Shiro and having access to a great source of magical energy, Shiro claims that Saber Alter is literally invincible and that not even Sakura, who had an extraordinary amount of magical energy, would be able to beat her. The disparity in strength between Saber Alter and the Saber prior to her darkening is such that, whereas Artoria was greatly outmatched by Heracles and gravely injured in their first fight, Saber Alter was able to easily corner and overwhelm him even in a direct battle. Although Heracles smashed the ground with an attack powerful enough to destroy a mountain, even the flying rubble did not cause her to falter, and she simply made her way through Berserker's sword and the flying clods to attack his defenseless body. Every single of her strikes is massive, and anyone fighting her without paying attention will have the top half of their body sent flying. Their power is equivalent to an A-rank attack, and as such, she sliced through Heracles' harder than steel body, killing him like it was nothing. Although Berserker gained resistance to her attacks after being healed thanks to God Hand, Saber Alter was capable of killing him more times by increasing the power of her attacks with her Mana Burst skill, to the point where each of them looked like a noble phantasm. The only time she invoked the true name of her sword to fire her noble phantasm is at the end of their fight when her lips are shown muted. In the Fuyuki Singularity, Ku Chulain noted that Saber had trouble defeating Berserker. In this state, Artoria's luck has been greatly decreased. Although Ku Chulain agrees that as caster he wouldn't stand a chance against Saber Alter, he claims that he could have finished her off with just one strike had he been summoned as a lancer. Due to Saber Alter having lost, the protagonist's compensation or the glimmer of the stars, a fight between Gilgamesh and her would be just a measure of their abilities. Back when they were alive, both had extraordinary magical energy output, so it would be a measure of their firepower, where Gilgamesh would gain a slight advantage due to his omnipotence and cunning. Should they fight as servants, Saber Alter could win due to Gilgamesh not having any assistance from his master, as he usually fights relying only on his own power, regardless of his master being a first-rate or third-rate mage. Gilgamesh could defeat her if his master's charm as a human is high. Artoria is strong enough to block a strike from full-power Ku Chulain Alter without much difficulty, whereas even while weakened by Semiramis poison he had been shown to be strong enough to kill Karna with one blow. After receiving Ku Alter's attack she decided to join Heracles in his battle against the Celtic warrior, to which he responded by releasing all his curses in the form of his noble phantasm Kuruid Koinshin. With it, he defeated them both. Since the fight took place off-screen, it is unknown whether Saber Alter used her own noble phantasm against him or not. Since right before their fight began Saber Alter said, "Prepare to taste the steel of my scapered sword," it is implied that she wasn't actually planning on using the beam attack function of her sword but rather fighting him directly in close-range combat. In exchange for her power having been increased more than normally, the armor Artoria wears was dyed jet black and grew in weight, changing into a heavier armor. Due to her armor having been reinforced, granting her more defensive ability than in her original state, it seems like her agility has decreased as a result. Whereas Saber Alter overwhelms Medusa in technique, vitality, and magical energy, Medusa was able to fight her thanks to her superior speed and her mystic eyes. Even though they weren't able to petrify Saber due to her having greater magical energy, it still forced a great pressure on her, reducing her abilities by 1 rank and stunning her, allowing Medusa to keep her occupied by using her full strength for over 12 minutes. Even in this weakened state, Saber was strong enough to repel Kalidbog II with 1 strike, and to swing her sword at the speed of light. As such, Saber Alter still overwhelmed Rider, and no matter how quickly Medusa leapt to attack her blind spots, Saber still deflected all of her attacks, without suffering a single scratch or showing any fatigue. Shiro Amiya claims that even with Archer's arm and if he were in perfect shape he wouldn't be able to beat Saber since he can't project any noble phantasm exceeding hers. However, in their actual fight, whether it was in fear of breaking the ceiling of the cave they were on if she used it, or maybe because of some other reason, Saber Alter fought him using only her sword technique and not her noble phantasm, giving Shiro a slight chance of victory. The power gap between the two is still too great, so Shiro is forced to reach deep down into Archer's arm to pull out his ultimate tactic and use Kansho and Bakuya's full capabilities. With the triple-linked crane wings, Shiro attacks her with the method he couldn't come up with, the stance that guarantees a sure kill. Targeting the enemy's neck, the 2 blades are thrown drawing an arc so they intersect right on the enemy. Although no hero can come out unscathed after being trapped between steel-penetrating noble phantasms, Saber Alter blocks them like nothing. By projecting the swords a second time, he blocks her attack, and before she has time to unleash a fatal strike, another surprise attack comes from behind her which she dodges thanks to her godlike cognition-like instincts. Although Shiro attacks multiple times over her unguarded body by making use of the magnet-like properties of Kansho and Bakuya, Saber Alter even blocks the simultaneous attack from 4 blades, destroying them in the process at the cost of leaving herself open. Although the battle would have ended with a stalemate, Shiro surpasses his limits by creating a 3rd pair of swords with which he slashes her exposed body with a perfect attack, defeating her. Having blocked the 2 earlier surprise attacks from the enemy, her limbs were occupied for the briefest of moments, and thus, she wasn't able to block his final attack, which shattered her organs and crushed her spine. The battle would have ended there if Shiro had simply finished her off by destroying her brain or heart, however, it had taken everything he had to defeat her and as such, his mind had been destroyed in the process, leaving him motionless on the ground. Compared to her regular state's already superb regeneration, Artoria Alter's regeneration is bolstered by the almost infinite source of magical energy from Sakura, allowing her to heal those wounds in 10 minutes and requiring the destruction of her head or heart for immediate death. As such, Saber Alter proclaimed her victory. Skills. Class skills. Magic resistance, B rank. Due to being blackened, the rank of this skill is lower than its original value. Still, its rank is considerably high, as it nullifies spells at B rank, activated within 3 counts, or lower, and it is difficult to harm her even with greater magecraft. Riding, rank. In the maddened state while blackened, the loss of fine control makes it impossible for Saber Alter to ride beasts, rather, the mount cannot withstand it. Therefore, in reality, one can consider the riding ability lost. Personal skills. Mana Burst, a rank. Both Saber's body and sword are always infused with the magical energy supplied by the Greater Grail. By instantaneously releasing her magical energy, her abilities are increased in a similar manner to jet propulsion. It engulfs her more powerful attacks and leaves a black trail behind her strikes. She can release a burst of black energy in varying sizes called Burst Air, the pseudo-EA, that can either travel towards the opponent or rise high into the air. Its power is great enough to give Rider of Shinjuku a mortal wound. She can create solid energy in the form of a dragon's head to grab, bite, and throw the enemy with Tyrant Clap, Taranto Kurapu, and she can strike at the enemy from afar by surging magical energy around her and attacking with several black tentacles of energy. Of course, the magical energy which is constantly consumed is also quite large, so her appetite has also grown compared to her normal counterpart in order to sustain herself. Artoria herself possesses average physical strength, but she managed to defeat countless enemies by strengthening all actions with her excessive magical energy. Instinct, B rank. In order to maintain her reason in this state, constant self-control is required. Due to her constantly suppressing her rage, her surroundings are neglected and instinct is dulled. On the other hand, Artoria in this state may be rather more likely to take action due to her behavior being distanced away from that of a hero's. Despite this skill having been ranked down, Saber Alter still possesses the ability to always feel the best course for oneself during combat. Charisma, E-rank Saber Alter boasts the natural talent to command an army. However, the rank of this skill is much lower than normal, as the magnificent king's charm which once inspired and captivated her soldiers is gone. It increases her leadership skills while significantly decreasing the morale of her troops. Noble Phantasm. In this form, Artoria still wields Excalibur. Due to the nature of this divine construct as a sword that amplifies, when Saber was blackened, Excalibur blackened with her, becoming known as Excalibur Morgan. Be considered even more dangerous than its regular counterpart due to Artoria wielding it to her heart's content, without controlling her own magical energy. As such, to beat Saber Alter in a one-on-one duel, her opponent would need to be a skilled user of a noble phantasm that equals hers. A contradiction, since very few heroic spirits may possess a noble phantasm surpassing hers. Furthermore, thanks to the enormous mana supply granted by Sakura, Artoria can now invoke this noble phantasm without limit. Thanks to this, after Saber was blackened in the Fuyuki Singularity, she began rampaging like a tiger released from a cage, defeating Emiy, Benkei, Medusa, Heracles, and Hassan of the Cursed Arm by herself. In her fight against Medusa, Excalibur Morgan managed to offset 90% of Bellerophon in less than an instant, despite Medusa's mystic eyes producing a rank down on all of Artoria's abilities. Saber's Holy Sword would normally have no trouble vaporizing Medusa's trump card. However, Shiro was able to aid her by making up for the difference with Rho AIAs, barely gaining an edge in the confrontation of the noble phantasms. Thanks to their combined efforts, Saber was left deeply wounded. However, she still had some power left, and had Shiro not killed her right there with the Azoth sword, Saber would have healed short after. In her fight against Caster Ku Chulain and Mash, Saber Alter lost due to her tenacity wavering. Since she stayed her hand at the last moment right before firing her noble phantasm, Mash managed to block it with Lord Chaldea's, allowing Ku to finish Saber off with Wicker Man. Even in this weakened state, Excalibur Morgan remains extremely powerful, as even after Altera absorbed a Holy Grail in the Septem Singularity and fired her Teardrop Photon Ray, its tremendous magical energy only reminded Mash of the sacred sword they saw in Fuyuki. Mash also stated that Lord Chaldea's wouldn't have been able to block it on its own, as she needed the help of Boudica's own noble phantasm to block it, and even then, Lubu and Spartacus were destroyed by the light since they were rampaging around the palace entrance. She would go on to doubt if Nero Claudius, Boudica and herself would be enough to beat Altera since she had help of a powerful caster when they defeated Saber Alter. Although Saber Alter considers Altera herself to be a disappointment, once Altera starts drawing all the mana in the atmosphere into her blade, Artoria acknowledges her Teardrop Photon Ray as a worthy foe. Despite that noble phantasm being capable of incinerating the world, Excalibur Morgan overpowers it, annihilating Altera. Power output demonstrated by the Lion King when they first saw her in the Camelot Singularity is way beyond anything seen previously from Saber Alter. Wielding the most famous Holy Sword doesn't come without a disadvantage. Due to being the most famous Holy Sword in the modern era, anyone who gets hit by her noble phantasm and survives it will find out her true name. Thus, it will allow her opponent to come up with a better strategy next time they face each other. In this state, Artoria doesn't even try to search for a utopia but instead pursues a more realistic common ground, understanding that no matter how much she pursues her ideals, all humans will eventually die in a meaningless way. As such, in the hypothetical case that Shiro gave Avalon to Saber Alter, she wouldn't be able to use it. Incarnation. She is blackened by the mud from the Holy Grail in the form of the Shadow, and she is incarnated by the power of the Grail to have more concrete ties to the physical plane. This makes her into a powerful being, and while blackened servants cannot return to spirit form, Artoria never had that ability even as a regular servant. She does gain the ability to travel quickly by sinking into the shadow and moving elsewhere at Sakura's command. Due to no longer having to restrain her magical energy consumption, she has lost her limitations, causing her fighting ability and destructive power to jump significantly, comparative to a runaway train, but fine control is no longer possible for her. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.